So welcome everyone. We are recording this topic, this event presented by our two master gardeners, Deborah Spanier and Arlene Banks. The topic is fragrant plants. I'm Shireen Ash, a librarian from the Corte Madera Library. The talk will run about 45-55 minutes. I'm going to ask you to stay mute throughout. Any questions you have, please put in the chat. And at the end, Arlene and Deborah will do their best to answer them. You're welcome to keep your videos on or off as you prefer, but just do remember that we are recording them, and we apologize for the little bit of a late start. So here we go with fragrant plants, and I'm going to just introduce our speakers. Deborah Spanier has been a master gardener since 2016. She's performed garden walks to give homeowners advice about water use and choosing appropriate plants. Deborah's conducted research on choosing leafy greens and herbs, and has also been involved with native plant propagation. She's helped maintain the demonstration garden at Blackie's Gardens. Deborah enjoys exchanging ideas with other gardeners and working in her home garden in Mill Valley, where she's been gardening and living for over 30 years. Arlene Banks has been a master gardener since 2020. She's lived in San Rafael also for over 30 years, and in that time has learned a lot about what grows in Marin's various microclimates. Arlene also enjoys visiting gardens, talking to other gardeners, working on her own garden, and luckily for us, they both like sharing their expertise and knowledge as they will today. So with that, Arlene, do you want to get us started?
Right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, and thank you for being here. I wanted to talk a little bit about fragrance and why is it important to us? Why do we want to smell the flowers, smell the roses? And just in general, the idea of fragrance and being out in nature, it helps quiet the mind and calms the nervous system. It just makes us feel good, and I don't know, it makes me feel happy to smell a wonderful flower. And you know, the sense of smell is very strong and powerful for us. I know as a child, and probably you all have memories too. For me, a very strong one is the lilacs in our garden in May, and just sort of immersing myself, you know, in the flowers and how wonderful the lilac would smell. And you know, scientifically speaking, the smell a flower emits is actually intended for animals, for insects and birds, so that they'll be fertilized. And so us humans, we humans are merely bystanders and beneficiaries of the fragrant smell that plants emit. And so a plant will, the flowers will emit a fragrance at the time when the particular bee or whatever animal is active. So that's why some flowers smell more in the middle of the day and some at night. It depends on what insect they're trying to attract. And so I think we can go ahead with the first slide. So that would be Deborah.
All right, we're going to start with Aloysia citrodora, which is commonly known as lemon verbena. Lemon verbena is actually native to Argentina and Chile. It is a long, thin, it's a plant with long, thin, medium green leaves that have a highly aromatic scent. It also has clusters of tiny white and lilac flowers that look like beads that bloom in summer. It's a perennial deciduous shrub that grows upright and reaches a height of 4 to 6 feet tall, depending on the variety. The plant requires full sun and an average amount of water. Because the plant can get leggy, it is advisable to prune it every year. By pinching off the top leaves, it will become bushier and less lanky. The plant grows well in containers. It is pest resistant. It can be used in, it has many uses. It can be used in sachets to freshen the air. Lemon verbena has also culinary uses. It can be used to make tea and is often used as a garnish in cold drinks. It can be used for flavoring for meat, fish, poultry, and vegetable dishes. Some people confuse lemon verbena with lemon balm. Lemon balm is a plant in a whole different family. It grows it's shorter and has wider, more rounded leaves. Both plants have a lemony scent, but lemon verbena is much more intense in fragrance. The next slide, please. Okay, now we have a Coleonema pulchellum, much more commonly known as breath of heaven. This is a South African native plant. It is a shrub with yellow-green needle-like leaves on slender branches and star-shaped pink flowers. In Marin, the plant blooms in late winter through spring. The plant kind of lives up to its name. You can brush against it or push, pinch the foliage and you will get a heavenly scent. The plant grows to 4 feet tall. There is also a dwarf variety known as sunset gold that will grow to approximately 1.5 to 2 feet if you prefer a shorter plant. And then there's also another species of the plant called Coleonema album, which has white flowers and is known as white breath of heaven. But regardless of the variety or species, breath of heaven grows well in full sun and partial shade. Well-drained soil is a must. When first planted, breath of heaven requires regular watering, but once established, what's nice is the plant is drought tolerant. Breath of heaven can be pruned to control its size. It's not absolutely essential that you prune it, but people like to prune it sometimes to control its size and open its inner areas. It's best to prune after the blooming period ends. It is also important to keep in mind that breath of heaven produces flowers only on its new growth. Therefore, if you decide to prune it, you want to make sure to leave plenty of new growth on the plant, as the plant will not bloom if you cut it all back entirely. It's basically a very easy plant to maintain, which is why you see it frequently in home gardens and also in public areas. Next slide.
Okay, thanks, Deborah. The next plant is the Daphne odora, also known as winter Daphne. And this is just how it looks. It's in bloom right now. I have some at my house and I picked some a little earlier. So has a very pungent, wonderful smell, and it's great to have by your front door. So when you walk in and out, you can smell it. It's just wonderful. And I also think, just by the way, that the leaf edging is so beautiful, and you have that all year too, with the white edges along the side of the leaf. It is native to China and Japan, and it can grow 3 to 4 feet. It grows best in partial shade and requires well-drained, porous soil. It's known to be poisonous if ingested, so that's a concern if you have animals or children. But it is deer resistant, so that's something to be aware of. Okay, how about the next slide? All right, Choisa ternata, and also known more commonly as Mexican orange, sorry. And you can see it has the clusters of white flowers and they smell like orange blossoms, so thus the name. They bloom in late winter and early spring, and even the leaves have an aroma. It grows 4 to 8 feet tall, and it's known to be good as an informal hedge. It does attract the bees and the butterflies. It is deer resistant. it's got a great scent. Okay, next slide is also mine. So we wanted to talk about citrus plants in general, but and most citrus plants have a flower that has a wonderful aroma. So specifically, we're discussing the Meyer lemon, Citrus meyeri. So the flowers, they bloom in early spring and fall, through fall, spring through fall. And I don't know if you've ever seen orange tree with the bees on it. You just sometimes I've seen the bees just collecting all around the tree. There's that moment when they pollinate the flowers. So again, you walk by, you can say, what is that smell? And oh, it's the orange tree. So beautiful aroma. They like full sun and good drainage. And they can come in different sizes. And like, for instance, this one can be managed in a pot. So if people who have, a small patio, it's a good choice. Okay, next slide. Here we go. Okay, the Gardenia jasminoides, also known as gardenia. It is native to Japan and China. Besides the beautiful white flowers, the foliage is quite nice. It's a shiny, waxy foliage that stays green all year. But it's known to be high maintenance as it has pests, sometimes aphids, powdery mildew, and mold. Wonderful fragrance. Hopefully all of you have smelled gardenias in the past. It varies depending on variety, about how much height it gets. There's different varieties, 1 foot to 10 feet, 4 to 8 inches, 8 feet wide. Just as a matter of interest, it's named after a Scottish naturalist named Alexander Garden. Last name being Garden, so thus the name gardenia. Very simple. Okay, next slide.
Okay, the next slide is Purus japonica, also commonly known as Japanese Andromeda, and it is native to Japan, Eastern China, and Taiwan. It is also sometimes referred to as lily of the valley. It is an evergreen shrub whose flowers have a notable scent when in bloom. The mature plant grows to 6 to 10 feet. However, there are some varieties that are bred to be smaller in size. New leaves. One thing interesting about this plant is new leaves are bronzy to bright red and become a glossy green as they mature. You can see a mixture sometimes of red and this bronzy color and green color on the same plant. The plant has urn-shaped flowers that grow in clusters. Flowers are generally white, but there are some varieties that are pink and salmon colored flowers, and they kind of look like these flowers. Purus plants form flower beds in late autumn and winter, and they are open in late winter to mid-spring. Purus is actually related to azaleas and rhododendrons, and is often with azaleas and rhododendrons because it has they all have similar growing requirements. They grow best in acidy soil. The plant likes sun, but not real heat. In places where the summer temperatures are high, it's probably best to grow this plant in partial shade. The plant should also be grown in an area that is sheltered from the wind. It is also grows very well in containers. If you are going to prune this plant, it's probably best to prune it immediately after the blossoms fade. And broken branches, of course, can be pruned at any time. Next slide. The next slide is Pittosporum eugeneoides, commonly known as lemonwood. It's actually a native plant of New Zealand. There are several species of Pittosporum. This particular species was selected because of its strongly fragrant yellow flowers that bloom in spring. What I like about this variety is that its leaves. This particular species of Pittosporum has lance-shaped leaves that are wavy and edged. And of course, they are light green in color. If this plant is left unpruned, it will grow like 20 feet or more and will become probably a tree with a grayish type trunk. However, there are smaller varieties that are grown to 8 to 10 feet. And this is a popular plant because you can easily control it with pruning. It is recommended that you prune this plant several times a year between winter and early fall, and that you cut 2 to 6 inches from the top each time you prune. Frequent pruning results in a bushier plant. Pittosporum is frequently used as a screen or a hedge. To create a hedge or screen, you would plant several Pittosporum 1.5 feet apart. The plant likes full sun, but it will probably grow in partial shade. In areas with hot temperatures, it probably does better in partial shade. This plant takes a moderate amount of water. Okay, next slide.
Okay. Ribes sanguineum, also known as flowering currant. And the flower that you see on the slide is magnified. It's not that big, but it sure is pretty and a wonderful color. And for those of you who are fans of native California plants, this is one. And it is known to grow indigenously here in California, mostly Northern California, at elevations of 1,000 to 7,000 feet. So the flowers can be pink or red or white, and you get the fragrance and the flowers in January and February. So right now they're out. And even the leaves have a strong resinous scent. So it's deciduous, and at maturity it can be 10 feet high, 6 feet wide, and it does well in areas where there's a lot of water, but it can live well in a place where there's less water as long as it's watered. So moderate water will keep it evergreen in the summer. All right, so next slide, please. The rosa. And as we all know, the rose there's many different kinds of roses. There are some roses that don't have scent, so you have to be careful if you want to get a rose that has a wonderful scent. Make sure it has that before you leave the nursery. And there are some native Californian roses, for example, the California wild rose, and it is fragrant. And of course, the larger, the rose that you get, like say, for instance, I think the red one up on top is a Mr. Lincoln, and I'm pretty sure the one below it is the Royal Sunset. Both have wonderful fragrances. Roses are known to be high maintenance with pests such as aphids and powdery mildew and mold. But I don't think roses are as hard to grow as people claim them to be. They do need water. They're not drought tolerant, with some of the, as long as you don't water them later in the day, so they don't hold on to the water, or water them early in the day, and so they're dry out so they don't get the mildew, and water them low, water should go low so that it doesn't get too much water on the leaves. And roses in our area, you know, they'll bloom April, May, and stay bloomed through December. So they're really, you know, they're a nice workhorse, and it's certainly beautiful in your front yard or backyard, whichever. And they are known, you know, the deer will eat them. So if you got to have roses, make sure they're well fenced. There are sprays, different things you can spray on them that deter the deer. So that's another way. And of course, no two roses smell alike. No two flowers smell alike. Okay, so go ahead and let's go with the next slide. Okay. Sarcococa rucifolia, also known as sweet box, and it is native to Western China and Tibet. As you can see, the flowers are small, nearly hidden, but very fragrant, and perfume a wide area in January and February. Again, this is a great one for right by the doorway so that you can smell it on the way in and out. Doesn't need a lot of pruning. It's got an orderly growth and a few pests. So this is a real workhorse, and not too much trouble to keep it alive. It will grow. It has dark green waxy foliage, and it will grow to 4 to 6 feet tall, 3 to 7 feet wide. Yeah, there it is. Nice dark foliage. All right, so next slide, please. And
Okay, I guess now we'll talk about fragrant vines. Next slide. Okay, now we have here Lathyrus pericliminum, better known as honeysuckle. This particular species is native to the Mediterranean region of Europe. This Lathyrus pericliminum is one of several species of honeysuckle. This species is known as woodbine, and it has a sweet fragrance that is emitted by 2-inch long flowers, which bloom in spring and summer and usually last through fall. Flowers are followed by fall berries. The flowers are generally yellow on the inside and white on the outside. There are a few less common varieties that have partly purple or pinkish flowers. The flowers have a nectar which attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. The honeysuckle can be deciduous in some regions, but in our area with our mild winters, it is an evergreen. Honeysuckle can grow to 10 to 20 feet tall, but its height can easily be controlled by annual pruning. Honeysuckle is known to grow quickly and can spread easily to cover a bare wall. I have honeysuckle in my garden along a 6-foot fence. I wanted to cover a large area and achieve this by planting 3 honeysuckle plants 2 to 3 feet apart, and then spreading out the branches and staking them with a wire support. We prune the honeysuckle at least once a year, sometimes thinning out some of the branches. A honeysuckle can be grown in full sun or partial shade. Usually it requires full sun, but I have a partially shaded area that's growing very well. It requires a moderate amount of water. Next slide.
oh, okay. Trachelospermum jasminoides, more commonly known as star jasmine. This is a very popular plant. I see it growing many, many places. As you can see on this picture, on this photo, it is sort of espaliered, grows up the fence, but also can be like a shrub, a low-growing shrub. So it depends on how you prune it. Let's see. It has the star-shaped white flowers. wonderful fragrance, mostly like in May. I used to have it in my garden and it lasts for a month, the wonderful fragrance. It has few pests. It does attract bees. It is considered a night bloomer, so the blossoms open in the cool early evening. So it can climb or spread out high, low, depending on how you prune it. And low maintenance. So, all right. So the next slide.
Okay, the next slide is Wisteria floribunda, known as Japanese wisteria. There's another very common species of wisteria called Wisteria sinensis, also known as Chinese wisteria. This plant, the Japanese wisteria, has a spectacular show of very fragrant clusters of lavender flowers, sometimes lavender and white flowers that bloom in spring, usually late April or May. Leaves are 12 to 16 inches long and divided into leaflets. Wisteria has a very short blooming period for only about 2 weeks each year, but when it blooms, it's a real standout and looks beautiful. I know this from personal experience because I have it in my garden. Wisteria is a deciduous vine with twisting branches that need strong support and need pruning at least once a year and better twice a year. It can be trained to grow as a shrub or a standard. It's very adaptable, but you have to direct it and control where it grows. I have wisteria in my garden on the top edge of my fence and on the top of an arch. I look forward to its bloom every year. If you grow wisteria on a vine or a fence or on the side of your house, you really have to be committed to pruning it as the plant grows vigorously and can do damage to a structure with its twining type tendrils. Pruning ideally should be done twice a year, once after the flowering season in July or August, and then again in January or February before new buds form. Each time you would be cutting back unwanted shoots and some of the new growth. This controls the size of the wisteria. Pruning encourages actually to form flower beds rather than green growth. It requires full sun and moderate amounts of water. It's not fussy at all about soil, but it requires good rain. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to switch from vines to annuals, perennials, and bulbs, smaller type flowers. Next slide. Okay, the first plant we'd like to talk about is Freesia alba, known as Freesia. This particular species is an heirloom species. It has white funnel-shaped blossoms with a powerful scent. This plant is a native. It's native to South Africa. Interesting fact: its name Freesia is named after a German physician that studied, and a botanist that studied these plants, and his name was Dr. Friedrich Rees. It is a perennial plant that originates from a corm. There are actually 16 different species of Freesia, many of which were hybridized to produce over 100 varieties. We selected this particular white heirloom species because of its powerful sweet scent. But if you prefer colors, Freesia has been hybridized to have a multiple of colors, including red, pink, purple, lavender, and blue, and some varieties are bicolored. And you can even purchase seeds with an assortment of colors. Freesia, one thing interesting is the stems turn to one side at right angles and grow parallel to the ground. And the blooms are on the turned stem, 5 to 10 flowers per plant. The corms should be planted in the fall in well-drained soil, either in full sun or partial shade. Freesia blooms in the spring and grows up to 1 to 1.5 feet tall, and then it enters a dormancy period in late spring and summer. During the dormancy, you might need moderate water during the blooming period, but during the dormancy period, no water is required. It's generally pest-free and easy to maintain. The plants should be pruned after the blooming period ends. As the plants enter the dormancy stage, you would remove faded flowers immediately to avoid them going to seed. But you would want to wait until the leaves turn yellow or start to wither before cutting them back. While the foliage is still green, photosynthesis is taking place, which provide energy to the corms, and the corms store this energy to produce seeds in the following season. Next slide.
Okay, Heliotropium arborescens, more commonly known as Heliotrope. So clusters of small evergreen, clusters of tiny white or pink fragrant flowers, and they bloom in February. So I don't know if anybody's seen one. I don't have this in my yard. It is native to Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru. And another wonderful plant for your entryway or patio. It likes full sun, but not direct hot sun, and you can tolerate a little shade. Let's see. Some people say that it should be covered if there's a frost, because it won't tolerate the really cold. Next slide.
Okay, and next we have Hyacinthus orientalis, commonly known as hyacinth. It is a native to the Mediterranean region. It's a perennial fragrant plant that originates from a bulb. It blooms in early spring and grows up to 1 foot tall. Flowers can be white, pink, blue, purple, red, and arise from narrow sword-like bright green leaves. To grow hyacinths, you would plant bulbs in the late fall. Best to plant them 3 inches deep and 6 inches apart. It is best to plant them in the sun, but they will grow in partial shade. This plant is also grown successfully in containers. Hyacinths require a regular amount of water during the growth and bloom season, but after the blooming period, you can they require less water. And after the blooming period, it's good to remove the spent flowers and cut back the foliage once the foliage turns yellow. I just want to say that I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and where just about nothing grows during the winter season. And the hyacinths came out, and they were the first flowers to bloom in spring. And I was always excited and have memories of seeing these hyacinths, because I knew winter was almost over and soon we would have lots of flowers in the garden. In California too, hyacinths are one of the first blooms in spring. They look good as border plants along walkways, as cut flowers. They make stunning bouquets. It should be noted though that hyacinths bulbs contain acylic acid, which may cause some skin irritation. So we just recommend that if you're handling the bulbs, wash your hands afterwards. But it's a great plant in a garden. Next slide. Okay, next we have the Lathyrus odoratus, known as the Sweet Pea. It is native to the Mediterranean region. It is grown as an annual for its clusters of fragrant flowers. There have been species that have been bred for summer blooming, but this particular species and the majority of species bloom in late winter and spring, and they usually die off in the summer heat. They may be around in the early summer, but then they tend to die off. Blossoms come in single colors or bicolors or a mix of colors. Each blossom contains one large, upright, roundish petal, two narrow side petals, and two united lower petals, which is known as the sweet pea shape. The plant has either a bush habit or a vining habit. The vines can grow up to 5 feet tall and produce tendrils that attach themselves to nearby support. It's best to plant in the fall from mid-October to December when the ground is cool. Plants will not germinate in warm or hot weather. It does best when planted in full sun. It's best to sow seeds 1 to 2 inches apart. When the seeds sprout and they're 4 to 5 inches high, it's best to thin them so they're 6 inches apart. Deadheaded spent flowers prolongs blooming. The plant is toxic and is not edible. It should not be confused with a variety of the edible pea plant, also known as a sweet pea. The plant is not completely deer resistant, but deer prefer other plants which are less fragrant and less toxic. Next slide. Oh, I'll take this one too. This is the Narcissus actaea, and also known as the Poeticus daffodil. This is, it's, first of all, I should say it's native to Europe and North Africa. This is a very fragrant variety of a daffodil with 6 white petals known as the perennials, and a broad yellow cup in the center with red edges. This particular variety usually has 1 flower per stem. Cultivated daffodils have been organized in 13 divisions based on the characteristics of the blooms. Poeticus division daffodils have a short cup and a contrasting color to the petals. This is easily grown. It is a perennial bulb that can grow well in full sun or partial shade. It generally grows to about 14 inches in height. It does best in well-drained soil. It requires water during the growing season, but no water once the flowers die back. Bulbs should be planted in the fall and will bloom each year in late spring. I think it's best for aesthetic reasons to plant in groups of 6 bulbs, but that would have the best visual impact. It looks spectacular too when planted in mass and mixed with other bulbs. It's a welcome addition to beds, borders around shrubs and under deciduous trees. It has excellent cut flowers. These daffodils are very easy to maintain. Flowers should be deadheaded as they fade to prevent unwanted reseeding, and foliage should be cut back to the base after it begins to wither. There are no serious disease or pest problems. Deer and rabbits kind of avoid this plant due to its toxin. This particular species was had won some awards. It has won the Worcester Award of the American Daffodil Society, as well as an award of Golden Merit from the Royal Horticultural Society. And it's just a very pretty variety of daffodil. Next.
All right, Viola odorata, otherwise known as sweet violet or wood violet. And when you take a look at the leaves, you can see they're heart-shaped. So this is the time of year for things heart-shaped. It is also known, this Viola odorata is known to have medicinal use. and often used in perfumes and flavorings. I'm not telling you to do this, but the leaves and flowers are known to be edible. So the flowers can be white, lavender to purple, and you can see how low it grows. So it is it's a ground crop cover, but also can be used in pots. It blooms in late winter into spring, prefers a bright shade. It spreads through stolons or runners, and can crowd out other plants. And violet is a common name, and pansies are species of violas. It is also native to Europe and Asia. And I think that's our last of the 20. Are there questions?
Hi, just give me a moment. And there are some questions in the chat, and we will get to those in a minute. I'm just going to stop the share, and there we are. So first of all, I want to thank you both. Let me get my video on. I want to thank you both for a really informative, very clear presentation, a lot of detail, very specific, which I found personally very helpful as a person who likes to try to garden, as I'm sure everyone here does. So let me just go to the chat, and there are some questions. I'm going to start with one of the first questions, which is there a transcript or recording available? And I just want to reiterate that yes, there is a recording available, or it will be. We're recording now, and the recording will be up on the Marin County Free Library YouTube channel. It usually takes about 2 weeks, and that's barring any surprising little technical issues. So let's hope they don't happen. But there are many other Marin Master Gardener presentations there, so I'd encourage you to take a look. So now let's get to the first question was, is lemon verbena edible? I think you addressed that, but could you repeat, please?
Yes, it is edible, and the leaves are used, as I said, to make tea and as a garnish in a drink, and it can actually be used as an herb in vegetable meat and poultry dishes. It definitely is an edible.
Great.
I'm
Good.
sorry.
Thank you for that. Are the currant berries edible?
Oh, that's mine. I think that they're, I'm not sure if they're edible for humans, but I know that the birds do eat them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So edible for someone.
Yeah. I'd have to look that one up and see if they're edible for humans. I would be afraid to say yes.
Yeah, we don't want to give the wrong information. On the edible, edible side of things, someone comments that Ribes sanguineum, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, is not tasty. And then someone asks, how did so many plants native to China and Japan get introduced in this climate? Someone else responded, but of course you guys could weigh in, saying China, being as large as it is, includes many plants that are well suited to all of North America and Europe. We can thank them for camellias, rhododendrons, many deciduous magnolias. So I don't know, Deborah or Arlene, if you want to add to that.
Well, in China, there are areas in China that will have similar climates as where we are, or other parts of North America. So there's plants from all over the world in all of our gardens. So
I don't want native plants only, but we do often welcome plants from other parts of the world that are very nice to look at. And plants that have similar, we have a Mediterranean climate here in Marin, and if other areas where there is a Mediterranean climate, they similar plants can grow, and people just having them.
Yeah, and every plant was native somewhere. So for me, it's interesting to know where it started, and that gives you a clue as to where it will grow well.
It's a really good point.
Mhm.
Someone
Like-
notes, oh, go ahead, Deborah, pardon me.
Sometimes some plants, people inadvertently travel and bring seed. They somehow get planted and they grow.
Mhm. So I was in several years ago. I was in Chile, the southern part of Chile, Patagonia, and we went up to some elevation, and beautiful field of yellow flowers. And I said to our guide, I said, "Are those indigenous?" And he looked at me like really quietly. He goes, "No." And when I got close to it, it was Scotch broom, the yellow flower. So it had come from someplace, and seed had been planted. Yeah, sadly.
Let's see, what's next? A comment that wisteria can be a problem, which Deborah, I believe that wisteria was yours, Deborah, and you noted that they can do damage. This person notes that they can bring down a tree, and also that the seeds are poisonous. I don't know if you care to comment on that.
Yeah, they are you have to control wisteria, and they can do damage. I've seen houses where damage was done by wisteria, because it does, if you don't take care of it, it does kind of grow uncontrollably, and the plant has enough strength to do damage to
Mhm.
It's a good
Right.
cautionary note.
Mhm.
I think this is a really interesting question. Can you define bright shade?
Well, it would be, say, for instance, in an area where there be shade, kind of a high shade, yet the daylight can come in. So, say our house plants, some of the house plants can't take a full direct sun because they'll get sunburned, but they like the sun coming, the brightness of the sun coming in through the windows. So same thing outside. We have to be careful about sunburn. Some plants will get sunburn if they're in too much direct sun. You can see it on the leaves.
Thank you. Do you want to describe what sunburn looks like so we can
well,
identify it?
It looks different on every plant, but sometimes it's like a brown, like the leaf has been browned, and you can sort of tell that it's been sunburned because it's the set of leaves that is closest to the facing the sun. It's very mechanical. You can see that these leaves got sunburned, and so maybe
Deborah?
that's the wrong place for that plant.
Deborah, did you want to add anything?
about sunburn in plants. Yeah, I think it's that we have a motto in Master Gardener, is the right plant in the right place. And
Yeah.
if it's getting burned by the sun, it probably belongs in a shadier spot, or another plant, or have it surrounded by another plant that would help shade it.
Yeah.
So Jim shared a little bit of information that I'll just read out from the chat. Thank you, Jim. Ribes sanguineum fruits are purple or blue-black round berries with white bloom. They are technically edible, but are quite sour. And he notes that this is from the North Carolina Extension Gardener.
Thank you.
In addition, yes, thank you. In addition to thank you for a lovely presentation, a listener asks, on the care of roses, is it too late to prune even if new growth has appeared? Also, could pruning save from previous problems or pests?
I'm not sure about the whether if it's too late to prune after new growth has already appeared. I'm not sure. You can try it. I mean, you can always clip it and see what happens. Yes, pruning can save from pests, especially if you kind of open it up in the center, the rose bush, and make sure there's a lot of breathing room for each part of the rose stems. Because if they're too close together, then there's more chance for it to gather what's the word? Not moss.
Moisture?
Fungus, like fungus. Yeah, moisture and fungus and mold. Yeah. So you do want to open them up in the center. I mean, there's people who spend their whole time on how to take care of roses. There is the Marin Rose Society for more information on how well roses can grow in Marin County, and there are particular roses that do better than others.
That's really good information. As long as we're sharing information, I just wanted to point out that I've shared throughout the chat and just now again the website for Marin Master Gardener. So I would encourage you all to look. There are other wonderful events that are coming up, as well as all kinds of planting lists. When they do their amazing sales, you can find out about that. So I think it's really worth a look-see. So I would encourage you to do that. Speaking of the website, someone asked if the video recordings could be posted on your website. So I'll just share that with you. That's been a request, sort of out of my purview, but I'm really happy to share any recording we do with you. And of course, then your organization can decide. So this is a good note. Someone adds Marin Master Gardeners hosts a rose pruning seminar at Falkirk, but it was in January. We have this every year. And I've given presentations with someone about rose pruning too at the Corte Madera Library in previous times. So with that, we are at 5:02. I just want to thank you both for really, again, very informative presentation. Many thanks about the beautiful slides and great information that I just want to make sure that you both get. And with that, I am going to end the meeting for all and say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any cheers, I just read that. If you have any follow-up questions, you feel free to email me. Okay, be well, everyone. Enjoy gardening.
Thank you.